Hey everybody, it's Madison, Gesiotto, Gilbert, and we're back with another Republican Rundown. I'm excited to be joined today by our awesome communications director, Keith Schipper, and our Republican Youth Advisory Council co-chair, CJ Pearson. Good to be with you guys.
Good to see you, Madison.
Excited to be here, Madison.
So obviously there's been a lot going on in the news this week. Let's start out in California. I don't know if you guys saw this clip, but I thought this was pretty bold of Governor Gavin Newsom. Take a look at this.
I know folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true, because it's true. But it's also true for months and months and months prior to APEC, we've been having different conversations.
So obviously he's reacting to the attacks that he's been receiving online, quite frankly, from people on both sides of the aisle, as San Francisco and California have put in this big effort to clean up ahead of APEC, ahead of Xi Jinping's visit. And people are asking, why? Why now? Why couldn't you do this 3 weeks ago? People's lives have really been affected by what's going on, whether it be the drugs, whether it be homeless people in the streets, whether it be just the simple filth on the streets of San Francisco. You're out in California, CJ. What have you been seeing and hearing on this?
No, Madison, you're exactly right. It has me thinking, as someone who lives in Los Angeles, California, will it take the president of China coming to LA for them to finally get rid of the homeless encampments, finally get rid of the crime, finally get rid of the poverty? It is a damn shame that Gavin Newsom needed the president of China to come to our state for him to actually get his act together and to actually be a governor and to look after the affairs of the state of California. But at the end of the day, this is a shame. And it's so interesting to see that he's taking this entire record of just failure all across the country, because if that is what he has to run on, things are looking good for us.
Yeah, I mean, look, last time President Xi saw Newsom, he was barreling over a small child on a pickup basketball game. So I'm sure Newsom realizes that can't be the last image, and then the next image he sees is driving through the streets of my home city, where it's littered with bodily fluids and needles and just, otherwise just a dirty feeling. And so, of course, he goes and cleans it up. I think the big issues are, I was in San Francisco a couple years ago. It is truly as bad as people have said. I actually understand it's gotten worse. But I think the more concerning thing is that he's rolling out, we're in California, he's rolling out a version of a red carpet for a guy who, was just flying a hot air balloon surveilling the country 9 months ago. It just shows that this Democrat Party, their misplaced priorities, not understanding the threats that we are facing. They're opening their arms, just excited to have, this guy President Xi, who has, posed a serious threat to our country and our national security. And not only that, but going above and beyond and providing him things that they won't provide to their actual citizens, the actual people that live in San Francisco. And that's just the basic necessities of having clean streets.
You're right. It perfectly illustrates where there is a will, there is a way. Why is there no will when it comes to everyday Californians? Why is there no will in rooting out the homeless problem in San Francisco and Los Angeles when the president of China is not in town? And I think that should be on the mind of Californians who believe that they've had to accept the reality for what it is. They believe that they have to accept homelessness for what it is. If they accept crime for what it is. No, where there is a will, there is a way. Gavin Newsom, up until this point, up until the president of China, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, strutted into town, he had no will. It took him coming here for him to find the will, which made a way to clean up the streets. And I got to say, if I am a lifelong Democrat, always voting blue in the state of California, I'm second guessing that. And I'm getting a little bit of buyer's remorse right now.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very glad that we got Madison back. Some technical difficulties. Who knows? Maybe Newsom, maybe President Xi. They didn't like what we were talking about, but we're excited to have Madison back with us.
Big tack.
The censorship is real, guys. The censorship is real. But, we see them coming in for APEC, and you see all these cars coming through San Francisco, and the videos are kind of crazy. It looks like you're going through the streets of China, not one American flag, Chinese flags lining the streets. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, again, I'm not surprised by anything this governor does. I'm not surprised by anything California Democrats do. I am a West Coast guy. I've lived in all over, from the bluest of states like Washington State to swing states such as Arizona and Nevada. Gavin Newsom just operates on his, he doesn't, again, like we were just saying, he doesn't believe that there are consequences. And again, rolling out the red carpet for someone who and making sure that President Xi feels as comfortable as he possibly could on his trip here is just, it should flabbergast folks, but at this point, nothing surprised me with the governor.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how it makes people in that city feel when they see their mayor, they see their governor, who claim that they can't move any faster than they've been moving for the past couple years in this crisis and be able to almost overnight change things in that city. So that has to be quite disappointing. But it's not just California. You go all the way across the coast to the East Coast. You go to New York. People also pretty disappointed in Governor Kathy Hochul on a whole multitude of issues. But of course, one of those being her somewhat slow response when it came to dealing with anti-Semitism following the October 7th attacks in Israel. A lot of people upset about that. And then, of course, about the crime in her city as well. She's now saying that they're ramping up efforts on surveillance to deal with hate speech online, concerning speech on the internet, in regards to anti-Semitism. Let's roll the clip on that.
In response to our desire, our strong commitment to ensure that not only do New Yorkers be safe, but they also feel safe, because personal security is about everything for them. As I said, no one walking down the street or in the subway should feel they have to hide any indications of what their religious beliefs are. We expect to see people celebrating their lives, walking about freely, and that is no longer the case because people are living in fear. They have a right to do whatever they want here in the state of New York.
So essentially, she's saying that she wants people to not only be safe, but to feel safe, which would be great if people actually were safe. But we've seen attacks in New York City, anti-Semitic attacks specifically, and we've seen crime, of course, continue to not be good in New York City. Those stats have been staggering, especially when you compare them back to 2019. People simply are not more safe, which is why a lot of people have fled New York for the past 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's telling that, Hochul is doing this now after, within the first day, 2 days. I remember the first protest of these far lefties demanding, Israel not defend itself sprung up in New York City. And she waited until now. We're, over a month and a half past since that October 7th attack. And now all of a sudden Hochul wants to take this seriously, just like, suddenly she decided she wanted to take this public safety of just basic New Yorkers and in New York City and around the state seriously after her record led to historic wins for us that actually led to us gaining back the House of Representatives here in D.C. It was because of C21 in New York, because of Hochul's failures on public safety. And then, of course, we just looked a week ago.
We've seen it with both her and Mayor Eric Adams when it comes to the border as well. This is something that they were on the complete opposite end. And then, of course, as things continue to get worse and worse and worse and affect their city, they want to have a different tune on that.
Oh, absolutely. I think you could. Look, last week, a huge bright spot for Republicans was in the Northeast once again, in New York once again. And it comes on the heels of Eric Adams suddenly taking the border crisis serious. All of a sudden, Hochul taking the threats of anti-Semitism serious. Democrats in New York have kind of led the way for Republicans to have success around this country. And we actually probably should thank them for that because of their failures, of their refusal to do things, the basics or understanding the crises that are facing folks have led to our wins. And so I guess in some regards we should probably be thanking them, but it's unfortunate that it's come at the expense of New Yorkers.
Yeah. And also, Keith, and Madison, if the governor wants to ramp up so-called surveillance for anti-Semitism, she should surveil her own party. She should surveil Rashida Tlaib. She should surveil Ilhan Omar, because it's not card-carrying Republicans running around America right now and screaming intifada. It's not card-carrying Republicans running around college campuses and saying from the river to the sea. It is the people that she stands with that are doing just that. And so I think, again, she's $1 short and a day late. And at the end of the day, it feels like it must be almost an election year for her to actually have some serious concern about this issue all of a sudden and right now. I think she realizes that for a long time she's been on the wrong side of this. But notice in that entire video, you don't see her calling out Rashida Tlaib, like I said. You don't see her calling out Ilhan Omar and all of these people who are essentially standing with Hamas. In D.C. here, there were 200,000 people gathered here to join their voices together against anti-Semitism. There are many people in the Jewish community who do not feel safe in the state of New York, and that is on Governor Hochul. She owns that. That is her record, and I think Jewish Americans in the state should keep that in mind as they head to the ballot box in the years to come.
For sure. CJ, you were at the pro-Israel march, right? Like, I would love to hear more about what you saw. I mean, it looked amazing. I mean, that crowd. I haven't seen it. I mean, I've seen March for Life. Obviously, that draws a massive crowd. But I mean, it seemed like that the crowd this week for the pro-Israel march could have rivaled your standard, your typical March for Life here. I mean, it was fantastic.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely incredible. 200,000 people from all across the country coming to Washington, D.C. One person I met with literally came from Florida to come to this march because they believed it to be so important because of everything that's happening across the country right now. We're seeing on college campuses people, again, screaming from the river to the sea, surrounding Jewish students in a library, not allowing them to leave. It is a very scary time for Jewish Americans here in the U.S. And I was talking to a few college kids. I said, how do you feel right now being on a college campus? And one Jewish girl told me that she has messages from pro-Palestinian students on her campus who are calling her a terrorist, who are calling her pro-apartheid. And honestly, it is shameful. And I think that, again, it comes back to a moral obligation. This isn't about, whether about politics. This isn't partisan. This is about standing against evil and being in favor of good and being in favor of basic humanity. Thousands of people have been affected by this in Israel, people that were killed, murdered, kidnapped, raped, all of those things. And I think that we have an obligation to call it for what it is. And it's just absolutely evil, and it's a disgrace to humanity. And it was so good to see 200,000 people come here to D.C. to peacefully protest and call this out. And notice that they weren't as they weren't vandals. They weren't aggressive like many of these pro-Palestinian protests have been, because that's just simply not the type of movement that they're looking to lead.
Yeah, and it looked cold. I don't know how an LA guy was able to handle the cold. I mean, I can't handle the cold right now. I don't know how you go from LA to DC.
A nice barber jacket.
It's too cold. It's too cold. We need to get back. I mean, I'm sure you can't wait to get back on that flight. It's too cold.
Exactly that. Exactly.
But Madison, we got new border numbers this week, and they're just again showing just how wild and crazy this crisis is out of control, and again how Biden is just absent, isn't doing anything. What is he doing? Why? This is a crisis of his own making, and it's going to cost him.
Yeah, the new border numbers are absolutely astonishing. I ran some of these down in Madison Minute yesterday, but talking, of course, about that close to 241,000 illegals encountered just last month at the border. And what I think is really interesting is when you compare the past 32 months straight, the total encounters were higher every single one of those months than the highest month in the Trump administration. Last month, of course, being a 353% increase over the average in October from 2017 to 2020. At least 12 people on the terror watch list were encountered trying to cross our border between ports of entry last month. This is something obviously that's been talked a lot about since what happened in Israel on October 7th, as we continue to see this become a larger and larger concern for people across our own country. And in total, since Biden took office, we're now surpassed 8.2 million illegals crossing. And then one other thing I think that I'd like to mention here from a legal perspective is the fact that in fiscal year 2023, we had close to 1 million, over 900,000 illegals released back into the United States. And if you talk to any attorney who works in this field or almost any expert, they're going to tell you that it's virtually non-existent, that chance that they're going to see a courtroom or leave this country. And that, I think, speaks to the issue being not just about securing the border, but really about fixing the immigration system, being able to address the court backlog. There's a whole multitude of issues here that I don't think are nearly talked about enough.
Yeah, no, Madison, you're exactly right. Madison and Keith, I would ask you this question. Are we surprised, by these numbers? Are we surprised? We should have known that this was only going to get worse when they put Kamala Harris in charge of the situation on the border, and so I think that this issue is particularly just really personally a very painful thing to watch. We are losing our sovereignty as a country right before our eyes. I've been to the border. I went to Del Rio, Texas, and Eagle Pass. I saw firsthand literally people prancing across the border and being given basically a ticket to wherever they want to, a free plane ride, and an iPhone, and whatever else they needed, while Americans here at home are struggling to make it by due to Bidenomics. And yet we're rolling out the red carpet, as Gavin Newsom did for President Xi, for illegal aliens. And I've got to say, this is it's particularly troubling, but I think Americans, again, we have to take notice of this. We need to make note of this, because if they're doing all of this for illegal aliens, when are they going to fight for us? When are they going to advocate for us? When are they going to deliver for the American people who are struggling and living paycheck to paycheck due to the disastrous economic policies of this president and this administration?
For sure, for sure. Well, I think we just have time for we have one last clip. Madison, do you want to? You're the one that dug this up, and I thought it was amazing. Do you want to kind of intro it real quick, and we'll just wrap up there?
Yes, I would love to intro this clip. Couldn't believe this. This is Biden with the Las Vegas Knights. They just won the Stanley Cup. Huge deal. And he decides to start talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, saying this. You really won't believe it. Check it out.
Just one promise. Don't get the Philadelphia Eagles to leave and go. Because I'll get divorced if that happens. I married a Philly girl, and it's a long story.
So now, I'm not a fan of the Eagles anymore than a lot of other people, but this was a pretty bizarre clip, and I think just speaks again to his mental capacity being far below what it should be for a president of the United States.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, we've seen, this is not, anyone that's seen Joe Biden in action over the last few years is not surprised that he would, one, mix up the team, let alone mix up the sport. But it is what it is. You get what you get. But I do want to point out, as a Vegas guy, I do want to point out one critical thing about the Golden Knights and what stood out. And if I were the Golden Knights, I probably would not have gone to the White House for too long. Like, I get it. You want to celebrate with the President of the United States. It's a cool honor. I would not have gone too long because, fun fact, the Las Vegas Golden Knights have been in the NHL for 6 full seasons. They have gone to the Stanley Cup Finals twice already. The first time they went to the Stanley Cup Finals was under Republican Governor Brian Sandoval. They went on in the years after that to not make it back to the Stanley Cup Finals and lose every single year under Democrat Governor Steve Sisolak. We elect a Republican governor last year, and they go back to the Stanley Cup Finals under Governor Joe Lombardo, and they win it this time. If I am the Golden Knights, I am making sure that there's a Republican governor in Nevada as long as possible. And if I'm Nevadans and a big fan of Vegas Golden Knights, which, I mean, it's a desert. Surprisingly, people love hockey in Vegas. I also am probably sticking with the Republican team. I want a Republican in the governor's mansion. They deliver Stanley Cups. And that is the big takeaway for me.
I love that. I love that. Madison, yeah, these clips, they don't surprise me anymore. This man is unraveling right before our eyes. Like, this is the same president who confused his wife with his sister. Just troubling. And I think...
How could you forget that clip? That's one of the most epic Biden fails of all time. And you look even at this clip too, CJ, in the background, when you look at the faces of the players who are just trying to comprehend what he just said.
I've watched this clip like 40 times, and I'm still trying to comprehend it. So I can only imagine what they were going through in real time.
Yeah. Well, great.
Right.
Well, thank you. I'm very excited to be here this time. CJ, we got to do this again. You got to come back. Maybe we even do it remote in LA. We can see some sunshine because I think out here in DC, we're not going to see as much of the sun. So we got to do this again, and I'm excited. I appreciate everybody joining us. And Madison, thanks for bringing us all together.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks, CJ. CJ, definitely join us again. We are happy to have you, and we'll see everybody next week on the Republican Rundown.